Captain Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stepped off the transport shuttle. The air on Vex 7 was thick and humid, filled with the sounds of strange creatures calling from the dense jungle that stretched beyond the small clearing where they had landed. He had been in space for 6 months, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. "Stay close to the ship," Jake told his team. Dr. Lisa Carter was already pulling out her equipment to scan the local wildlife. Engineer Pete Williams was checking the communication devices to make sure they could contact their main ship, the Endeavor, which waited in orbit above them. The third member of their team, Security Officer Danny Brooks, kept his hand near his weapon but tried not to look threatening. This was supposed to be a simple first contact mission. Earth's government had received signals from this Planet 3. Years ago, the signals seemed to come from an intelligent species that wanted to talk. After months of preparation, Jake's team was sent to make peaceful contact and hopefully establish trade relations. The jungle around them was unlike anything. On Earth, trees grew over 200 feet tall, with leaves that changed color as the wind moved through them. Strange flowers glowed with soft blue light, and insects the size of small birds buzzed through the air. Lisa was fascinated by everything she saw, but Jake felt uneasy. Something about this place felt dangerous. Captain Pete called out, looking at his scanner. "I'm picking up movement. Something big is coming our way." Jake turned toward the direction Pete was pointing. The jungle seemed to part like a curtain, and out stepped the most terrifying creature Jake had ever seen. It stood, 12 feet tall, on 2 powerful legs. Its entire body was covered in scales that looked like they were made of crystal, reflecting the light from the glowing plants around them. Its arms were longer than a human's entire body, ending in claws that could easily cut through steel. Its head was angular and predatory, with 4 eyes that glowed red in the dim jungle light. Behind the creature came others of its kind, but they were smaller and kept their distance. The big one was clearly their leader. It walked with confidence, each step making the ground shake slightly. When it spoke, its voice was deep and rumbling, like distant thunder. "I am Thrakvoss," the creature said in perfect English. "I am the war leader of the Krillian people. You are the humans who sent messages to our world." Jake tried to hide his surprise. He had not expected the alien to speak their language so well. "Yes, I am Captain Jake Morrison. We come in peace, hoping to learn about your people and perhaps establish friendly relations between our species." Thrakvoss made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was cold and unfriendly. "Peace. Your kind thinks peace is possible with everyone. You do not understand the way of the Krillian. We are warriors. We are hunters. We respect only strength." The creature stepped closer, and Jake could see that each of its scales was perfectly formed like natural armor. Its claws were sharp enough to cut through the hull of their shuttle. Danny moved slightly closer to Jake, but the captain held up a hand to stop him. "We don't want to fight," Jake said calmly. "We believe that different species can work together and learn from each other without conflict." Soft words from a soft species, Thrakvoss replied. "Your people come from a world of comfort. You have never faced true danger. You have never proven yourselves worthy of respect." Lisa stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "Actually, Earth is quite dangerous. We've survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, massive storms, and countless other threats. Humans have had to adapt to survive." Thrakvoss turned his 4 eyes toward her, and Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Survival is not the same as strength. Any weak creature can hide and survive. True strength comes from facing your enemies and defeating them in combat. Jake realized that this conversation was heading in a dangerous direction. "We're not here to prove our strength. We're here to learn and share knowledge. Then you will learn the way of the Krillian," Thrakvoss declared. "I challenge you, human leader, to ritual combat. If you win, your people may establish a presence on our world. If you lose, your people will leave and never return. And if I refuse?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Thrakvoss's claws extended slightly. "Then you and your team will not leave at all." Jake looked at his team. Danny was ready to fight, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. Pete was nervously adjusting his equipment, and Lisa was studying the aliens with scientific interest despite the danger. Jake knew that accepting the challenge was probably suicide, but refusing would definitely be suicide for all of them. "Accept your challenge," Jake said. The other Krillians made sounds of approval, and Thrakvoss smiled, showing teeth that were like daggers. "Excellent. We will fight in the traditional way. No weapons, except what nature gave us. No assistance from others. Victory comes through death or surrender." Jake felt his heart racing, but he kept his voice steady. "What about my team?" "We'll watch. They will see what happens to those who challenge the Krillian without true strength." The clearing where they would fight was surrounded by the other Krillians. Jake's team stood near their shuttle, looking worried but unable to help. Jake had no armor, no weapons, and no experience fighting aliens. Thrakvoss had natural armor, deadly claws, incredible strength, and a lifetime of combat experience. Fight began without warning. Thrakvoss moved faster than Jake had expected, crossing the clearing in 3 massive steps. Jake barely rolled out of the way as the creature's claws slashed through the air where his head had been. The claws cut through a tree trunk as thick as Jake's waist. Sending it crashing to the ground, Jake realized immediately that he could not match the alien's strength or speed. Every advantage was on Thrakvoss's side. But as he dodged another attack, Jake remembered something his military training had taught him. Sometimes the strongest enemy has the greatest weakness. Thrakvoss was confident, maybe too confident. He was used to enemies who tried to match his strength, was not. Used to enemies who used different tactics. Jake began to move differently, not trying to attack, but trying to understand his opponent. The alien was powerful, but not very flexible. His attacks were devastating, but followed predictable patterns. Most importantly, Thrakvoss was getting frustrated that Jake would not stand and fight like a traditional warrior, stand and fight like a true warrior. Thrakvoss roared as Jake dodged another attack. "I am fighting like a human," Jake replied, ducking under a swipe that would have taken his head off. This seemed to anger the alien even more. He began attacking more wildly, putting more power into each strike, but becoming less accurate. Jake used the environment around him, leading Thrakvoss into areas where the creature's size worked against him. The fight lasted for over an hour. Jake was exhausted and bleeding from several cuts, but he had learned something important. Thrakvoss was strong and dangerous, but he was also predictable. The alien fought with emotion, letting his anger control his actions. When the moment came, Jake was ready. Thrakvoss lunged forward with both claws extended, confident that this attack would end the fight. But Jake had been waiting for this exact move. He dropped low and rolled between the creature's legs, coming up behind him as Thrakvoss tried to turn around. Jake grabbed a sharp piece of the broken tree and drove it deep into a gap between the creature's armored scales. Thrakvoss roared in pain and surprise. He spun around, but Jake was already moving. The alien was wounded and off balance. Jake pressed his advantage, using his speed and agility to stay out of reach while the creature's movements became slower and more desperate. Finally, Thrakvoss collapsed to one knee, breathing heavily. The wound was not fatal, but it was deep. Enough to prove that the human had drawn blood. In Krillian culture, this was enough to claim victory. The clearing was silent except for the sounds of the jungle. Thrakvoss looked at Jake with something that might have been respect, but also with pure hatred. "You have won today, human," the alien said quietly, "but this is not over. You have humiliated me before my people. You have shown that a soft creature from a weak world can defeat a Krillian warrior. This shame will not be forgotten." Jake helped the wounded alien to his feet. "It doesn't have to be about shame. We can learn from each other." But Thrakvoss shook his head. "You do not understand. You have made an enemy today. I will not forget this defeat. I will not forget this humiliation. One day, I will return. And when I do, I will be ready for your human tricks." With that, Thrakvoss limped away into the jungle, followed by the other Krillians. Jake was left standing in the clearing with his team, victorious but somehow knowing that this was just the beginning of something much more dangerous. Thrakvoss limped through the forbidden zones of Vex 7, his wounded pride burning more than the cut on his side. The other Krillians had watched him lose to a human, a creature they considered weak and soft. Word of his defeat had already spread. Across the planet, warriors who once respected him now whispered behind his back. Children who once looked up to him now turned away when he passed. The shame was unbearable. In Krillian society, a warrior's honor was everything. To lose in combat meant losing respect, losing status, losing everything that made life worth living. But to lose to an alien from a world that had never known true? War was the worst kind of humiliation possible. Thrakvoss had been cast out from his clan. His own family had turned their backs on him. The other war leaders had stripped him of his titles and his place in their society. He was now what the Krillians called Voskron, which meant one who walks in shadow. He was dead to his people even though he still lived. For weeks. Thrakvoss wandered the dangerous outer regions of the planet where no civilized Krillian would go. These were the places where the most dangerous creatures lived, where the plants were poisonous and the very air could kill. But Thrakvoss no longer cared about danger. He had nothing left to lose. It was in these forbidden zones that he met the Flesh Weavers. The Flesh Weavers were ancient beings who had been banned from Krillian society long ago. They were masters of biological modification, able to change living creatures in ways that nature never intended. They could make a creature stronger, faster, more deadly, but their work came with a terrible price. Most who sought their help either died during the process or became something that was no longer truly alive. "You seek revenge," said the lead Flesh Weaver when Thrakvoss found their hidden laboratory deep in a poisonous swamp. The creature was barely recognizable as having once been Krillian. Its body had been changed so many times that it looked like a nightmare made flesh. "I seek strength," Thrakvoss replied. "The strength to defeat the human who shamed me." The Flesh Weaver laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Strength can be given, but everything has a cost. What are you willing to sacrifice?" "Everything," Thrakvoss said without hesitation. "My comfort, my safety, my natural form. I will become whatever I need to become to have my revenge." The Flesh Weavers began their work immediately. They had been waiting for someone desperate enough to undergo their most extreme modifications. Thrakvoss would be their masterpiece, their proof that they could create the perfect warrior. The first modification was to his muscles. The Flesh Weavers injected him with genetic material from the strongest creatures on Vex 7. His muscles grew larger and denser, giving him 3 times his original strength. The process was agony that lasted for days, but Thrakvoss endured it without complaint. Next came his armor. The Flesh Weavers grafted additional layers of crystalline scales onto his body, each one harder than steel. They also implanted metal plates beneath his natural armor, making him nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. The surgery took weeks, and Thrakvoss spent most of that time unconscious from pain. His claws were replaced with biomechanical versions that could extend and retract at will. These new claws were sharper than any blade and could cut through almost any material. Energy channels were built into them, allowing him to channel his body's natural electrical field into devastating attacks. The most dangerous modification was to his nervous system. The Flesh Weavers implanted cybernetic enhancers that increased his reaction time to superhuman levels. He could now track objects moving at incredible speeds and respond faster than any natural creature could. But this modification came with the highest risk. Many subjects died when their brains could not handle the enhanced processing speed, while his body was being transformed. Thrakvoss spent his conscious hours studying everything he could about humans. The Flesh Weavers had access to galactic information networks, and they downloaded every piece of data about Earth and its people into Thrakvoss's enhanced brain. He learned about human history, their wars, their fighting techniques, and most importantly, about their home planet. Earth was indeed a dangerous world, far more dangerous than most Krillians had realized. Humans had evolved on a planet where everything was trying to kill them. They had survived ice ages, massive volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and countless other disasters This knowledge only made Thrakvoss more determined. He realized that the human Jake Morrison had not won through luck or accident. Humans were natural survivors, adapted to overcome any threat through intelligence and adaptability. They were, in fact, what the galaxy called Deathworlders beings, from planets so hostile that they had become incredibly tough and resourceful. But knowing this gave Thrakvoss an advantage. He could prepare for human tactics in ways that other aliens could not. He studied recordings of human combat from throughout their history. He learned about their strategies, their weaknesses, and their psychological patterns. The Flesh Weavers also gave him something else: allies. Word of Thrakvoss's transformation had spread through the galaxy's underground networks. Other beings who had been defeated or humiliated by humans began to seek him out. They came from different species, different worlds, but they all shared the same burning desire for revenge against the humans who had bested them. There was Xerox 4, silicon-based warrior whose entire planet had been forced to negotiate with human diplomats instead of fighting them. His people valued honor in battle above all else, and the humans had robbed them of that honor by making war unnecessary. There was Vex Prime, an energy being who had been captured by human scientists and studied for months before escaping. The experience had driven him nearly insane with rage, and he now devoted his existence to proving that humans were not as clever as they thought. There was also Korth the Breaker, a creature from the Outer Rim who had lost everything when human. Traders had outsmarted him in a business deal. He had been forced to sell his family's ancestral home to pay his debts, and he blamed all humans for his shame. These allies also underwent modifications from the Flesh Weavers, though not as extreme as Thrakvoss's transformation. Each was enhanced in ways that would help them fight humans effectively. They studied human weaknesses and developed weapons and tactics specifically designed to counter human advantages. For 3 years, this group trained together in the forbidden zones of Vex 7. They practiced fighting techniques, tested their new abilities, and planned their revenge. Thrakvoss became their leader, not just because he had been modified the most, but because his hatred for humans burned brighter than anyone else's. The Flesh Weavers watched their creations with satisfaction. They had succeeded in creating something that had never existed before, a group of aliens specifically designed to hunt and kill humans. Each member of the group had been enhanced to counter specific human advantages: their speed, their intelligence, their adaptability, their teamwork. All of these human strengths had been studied, and countermeasures had been developed. But the modifications came with a price that none of them fully understood at the time. The more they changed their bodies, the more they lost of their original selves. Thrakvoss found that he could no longer feel joy or satisfaction. His emotions had been reduced to anger, hatred, and the burning desire for revenge. He was becoming more machine than living creature. The cybernetic implants in his brain began to change how he thought. Instead of the creative, instinctive thinking of a natural warrior, his thoughts became more mechanical and predictable. He could process information faster than ever before, but he had lost the ability to think in truly original ways. His allies were experiencing similar changes. They were becoming more effective fighters, but they were also becoming less adaptable, less able to handle unexpected situations. They were turning into perfect weapons, but weapons that could only be used for one purpose. As the 3rd year of their exile came to an end, Thrakvoss decided it was time to return. His transformation was complete, his allies were ready, and his plans for revenge had been perfected. He had become everything he thought he needed to be to defeat Jake Morrison and restore his honor. But in his obsession with becoming stronger, Thrakvoss had forgotten something important about the fight. That had started all of this. Jake Morrison had not won because he was stronger, or faster, or better armed. He had won because he had adapted to the situation, used his environment, and thought in ways that Thrakvoss had not expected. The enhanced Krillian warrior was about to learn that while he had spent 3 years becoming a more efficient killer, the human had spent the same time becoming something far more dangerous, a more complete survivor. The hunt was about to begin, but the question remained: who was really the hunter, and who was the prey? Jake Morrison stood in the training room of the human colony on New Denver, sweat dripping from his face as he finished another brutal workout session. 3 years had passed since his encounter with Thrakvoss on Vex 7, but not a single day went by without him thinking about that fight and the aliens' promise of revenge, the victory over the Krillian. Warrior had made Jake famous throughout human space. News reports called him the man who proved humans could stand up to any alien threat. Military commanders studied recordings of his fight to understand how one human had defeated a creature 3 times his size and strength. But Jake knew the truth that others did not want to hear. He had barely survived that encounter, and he had been lucky. Luck would not save him if Thrakvoss returned. "Again," said Amanda Price, watching Jake from the corner of the training room. Amanda was a former Earth Special Forces operator who had volunteered to help train Jake after hearing about his fight. She was small and lean, but Jake had learned not to underestimate her. She could move faster than anyone he had ever met, and she knew fighting techniques from a dozen different human cultures. "I've been at this for 4 hours," Jake said, breathing heavily. "My body needs rest." "Your body needs to be ready for anything," Amanda replied coldly. "That alien you fought is probably training right now. It's probably getting stronger every day while you complain about being tired." Jake nodded and got back into his fighting stance. Amanda was right, as usual. He had no idea what Thrakvoss was doing during his exile, but Jake doubted the alien was taking any breaks from preparing for their next encounter. The training, which Jake underwent, was unlike anything in standard military programs. Amanda had designed it specifically to enhance the natural advantages that humans possessed as Deathworlders. She pushed Jake's endurance to superhuman levels, making him run, fight, and think clearly even when his body was exhausted beyond normal limits. "Humans evolved on a world that was trying to kill them every day," Amanda explained during one of their sessions. "Your ancestors survived ice ages, predators, diseases, and disasters that would have wiped out most species. That survival instinct is still in your genes, but you have to unlock it." The physical training was only one part of Jake's preparation. Dr. Lisa Carter had returned to New Denver specifically to help him understand what they might be facing. She had spent 3 years studying everything known about Krillian biology, culture, and technology. "The concerning thing is that we haven't heard anything from Thrakvoss since he left Vex 7, Lisa told Jake during one of their meetings. "In Krillian culture, a warrior who suffers such a defeat usually either dies in exile or returns within a year to restore their honor. 3 years is far too long." "Maybe he's dead," suggested Ryan Davis, the colony's tech specialist. Ryan had taken Pete Williams's place after Pete retired to a safer job on Earth. "Those forbidden zones on Vex 7 are supposed to be incredibly dangerous." Lisa shook her head. "I don't think so. Intelligence reports from other planets suggest that something is happening in those regions. Energy signatures that don't match any known Krillian technology, communications that are heavily encrypted. Whatever Thrakvoss is doing, he's not doing it alone." This information worried Jake more than anything else. Fighting one enhanced alien would be difficult enough. Fighting a group of them might be impossible. Jake's training expanded beyond physical combat. Amanda taught him to use every environment as a weapon, just as his ancestors had done on Earth. They practiced in forests, deserts, underwater, in zero gravity, and in dozens of other conditions. Jake learned to see opportunities where others saw only obstacles. "The biggest advantage humans have is adaptability," Amanda explained as they trained in a simulated alien environment. "Other species evolved to be perfect for their home worlds. Humans evolved to survive anywhere. You can breathe different atmospheres, eat different foods, and fight in conditions that would kill most aliens." Jake also learned about the psychological aspects of combat. Dr. Kevin Walsh, a military psychologist, helped him understand how different species thought and reacted in battle. This knowledge had been crucial in his fight with Thrakvoss, and it would be even more important in future encounters. "Krillians are natural predators," Dr. Walsh explained. "They think in terms of hunter and prey. When you refuse to fight like traditional prey, you confused and frustrated Thrakvoss. That confusion gave you the advantage you needed, but Jake knew that Thrakvoss would not make the same mistake twice. The alien had 3 years to study human fighting techniques and develop countermeasures. Jake needed to be ready for an enemy who knew all of his tricks. The most important part of Jake's preparation was technological. Ryan Davis had been working with Earth's best engineers to develop equipment specifically designed for fighting enhanced aliens. They could not make Jake stronger or faster than creatures like Thrakvoss, but they could give him tools that would level the playing field. Traditional weapons are useless against Krillian armor, Ryan explained as he showed Jake the new equipment. But these sonic disruptors can interfere with their nervous systems. These micro-explosives can find gaps in their armor. And this environmental suit will let you fight in conditions that would be impossible for most aliens. Jake tested each piece of equipment extensively. Sonic disruptors could disorient enemies without causing permanent damage. The micro-explosives were small enough to be hidden anywhere but powerful enough to penetrate even the strongest alien armor. The environmental suit was a masterpiece of human engineering, allowing Jake to survive and fight in extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, and high radiation environments. But the most important tool Ryan gave Jake was information. The tech. Specialists had built a network of sensors and monitoring systems throughout the human colonies. If Thrakvoss or any other enhanced aliens approached human space, Jake would know about it immediately. Knowledge is power, Ryan said. The more we know about our enemies before they arrive, the better our chances of surviving their attack. As Jake's training continued, disturbing reports began reaching human colonies from across the galaxy. Other species were reporting encounters with enhanced aliens who seemed specifically designed to fight humans. These creatures had studied human tactics and developed weapons and abilities to counter human advantages. It's not just Thrakvoss, Lisa reported during a colony council meeting. There's an entire network of aliens who have been modified to hunt humans. They call themselves the Revenge Coalition. The news was terrifying, but it also confirmed what Jake had suspected. His fight with Thrakvoss had started something much larger than a personal vendetta. It had become a test of whether humans belonged among the galaxy's dominant species. Jake's training intensified as the threat became clearer. He spent 18 hours a day preparing for combat, studying alien psychology, and testing new equipment. Amanda pushed him harder than ever, forcing him to fight while exhausted, injured, and outnumbered. In a real fight, you won't have the luxury of being at full strength, she reminded him constantly. You need to be able to win, even when everything is against you. The psychological preparation was just as important as the physical training. Jake worked with Dr. Walsh to develop mental techniques for staying calm and focused under extreme stress. He learned meditation techniques from Earth's ancient cultures and combined them with modern understanding of combat psychology. Fear is natural, Dr. Walsh explained. The key is to use fear as fuel instead of letting it paralyze you. Your ancestors survived because they could think clearly even when facing death. Jake also spent time studying the history of human survival. He read about explorers who had survived in hostile environments, soldiers who had won against impossible odds, and ordinary people who had overcome extraordinary challenges. Each story taught him something about the human capacity for adaptation and survival. The most important lesson Jake learned was that humans had never won through superior strength or speed. They had won through intelligence, creativity, and the ability to work together. Even when fighting alone, a human carried the knowledge and experience of their entire species. You're not just fighting for yourself, Amanda told him during one of their final training sessions. You're fighting for every human who ever lived and every human who will ever live. That's not pressure, that's power. As the 3rd year of his preparation came to an end, Jake felt ready for whatever Thrakvoss might throw at him. He was stronger, faster, and smarter than he had been 3 years ago. More importantly, he understood what it truly meant to be human in a galaxy full of aliens who saw his species as weak. But Jake also knew that his greatest advantage was not his physical conditioning or his advanced equipment. His greatest advantage was that he had remained human while his enemy had become something else. Thrakvoss had spent 3 years becoming a more efficient killer, but Jake had spent the same time becoming a more complete human being. The question that remained was whether being human would be enough when the beast finally returned for its revenge. The alarm sirens on New Denver Colony began wailing at 3 in the morning, jolting Jake Morrison from his sleep. He had been dreaming about his first fight with Thrakvoss, reliving the moment when the alien's claws had nearly taken his head off. Now, as he rolled out of bed and grabbed his equipment, Jake wondered if the dream had been some kind of warning. Ryan Davis's voice crackled through the communication system. "Jake, you need to get to the command center immediately. We have multiple ships approaching the colony, and they're not responding to our communication attempts." Jake ran through the corridors of the colony, pulling on his environmental suit as he moved. Other colonists were rushing to their emergency stations, but Jake could see the fear in their eyes. Everyone knew this day would come eventually. The only question had been when, in the command center. Ryan was staring at multiple screens showing radar contacts approaching from different directions. Dr. Lisa Carter was already there, studying the readings with a worried expression on her face. "How many ships?" Jake asked as he entered the room. 12 that we can detect," Ryan replied. "But there could be more using stealth technology. The lead ship is broadcasting on Krillian frequencies, but the others are from different species. It looks like your alien friend brought help." Jake studied the tactical display. The ships were approaching in a coordinated pattern that showed military training. This was not a random attack. It was a carefully planned assault. "How long until they reach us?" Jake asked. 20 minutes, Ryan said. "Maybe less if they increase speed." Lisa looked up from her scanner readings. "Jake, the energy signatures from these ships are unlike anything we've seen before. Whatever modifications they've made to themselves, they've also upgraded their technology." Jake activated the colony's defense systems, but he knew they would not be enough. New Denver was a civilian colony, not a military base. Their weapons were designed to handle pirates and wild animals, not enhanced alien warriors with advanced technology. "Evacuate all non-essential personnel to the underground shelters," Jake ordered. "Get everyone who can't fight to safety. This is going to be bad." As the colonists rushed to follow his orders, Jake contacted Amanda Price. She had been expecting this call for 3 years. "It's time," Jake said simply. "I'll be there in 5 minutes," Amanda replied. "Try not to get killed before I arrive." Jake allowed himself a small smile despite the situation. Amanda's dry humor had helped keep him sane during 3 years of brutal training. He would need that calm confidence in the fight ahead. The alien ships landed in the open area outside the colony's main buildings. Jake watched from the command center as the hatches opened and figures began emerging. Even at a distance, he could recognize Thrakvoss immediately. The alien was larger than before, his crystalline armor gleaming with an unnatural light. But there were others with him, creatures Jake had never seen before. "My God," Lisa whispered as she watched through the telescopic cameras. "What have they done to themselves?" Thrakvoss looked like a living weapon. His original 12-foot height had increased to nearly 15 feet. His armor was no longer just crystalline scales, but appeared to be a combination of organic material and advanced technology. Energy conduits ran along his arms and legs, glowing with a pale blue light. His claws had been replaced with retractable blades that sparked with electrical energy. The creatures with him were equally terrifying. There was a silicon-based warrior whose entire body seemed to be made of living metal, an energy being that flickered between solid and incorporeal forms. A massive creature with too many arms and eyes that moved independently of each other. Each one had been modified and enhanced to become the perfect killer. Amanda arrived at the command center just as the aliens began moving toward the colony buildings. She took one look at the tactical display and shook her head. "Well, this is going to be interesting," she said. "I count at least 8 different species, all of them enhanced for combat. Your alien friend has been busy." Jake studied the approaching enemies. He moved with mechanical precision, each one covering the others in a formation that showed extensive training. There were no wasted movements, no signs of individual personality. They had become a perfect fighting unit. "They're not heading for the main entrance," Ryan observed. They're splitting up, surrounding the entire colony. Jake realized what was happening. This was not just an attack. It was a trap. Thrakvoss wanted to make sure Jake could not escape or get help from the other colonists. He wants me to come out and face him, Jake said. This whole assault is just to force me into single combat. And don't do it, Amanda said immediately. Use the colony's defenses. Make them come to us. But even as she said it, they all knew it would not work. The colony's weapons were powerful enough to damage the alien ships. But Jake could see that his enemies had planned for this. They had positioned themselves so that any attack on them would also hit the colony's own buildings. Thrakvoss's voice boomed across the colony through external speakers on his ship. Jake Morrison, I have returned as promised. Humiliated. Me before my people? And now I will have my revenge. Come out and face me, or I will kill every human in this colony one by one. To prove his point, one of the other aliens fired a weapon at an empty storage building. The structure simply vanished, turned to dust in seconds. The message was clear. They had the power to destroy the entire colony if Jake did not cooperate. I have to go out there, Jake said. It's suicide, Lisa protested. You can see what they've done to themselves. They're not even really alive anymore. They're living weapons designed specifically to kill you. Jake put on his helmet and activated his environmental suit systems. Every piece of equipment Ryan had given him was functioning perfectly. The sonic disruptors were charged and ready. The micro-explosives were armed. His suit's environmental systems were monitoring air quality and temperature. Maybe, Jake said. But I'm not the same person who fought Thrakvoss 3 years ago. And I have something they don't have. What's that? Amanda asked. I'm still human. Jake left the command center and walked toward the colony's main entrance. Through the security cameras, he could see the enhanced aliens waiting for him in the central plaza. They had arranged themselves in a circle with Thrakvoss at the center. It looked like an arena designed for gladiatorial combat as Jake stepped. Outside, he felt the weight of 3 years of preparation on his shoulders. Every hour of training with Amanda, every conversation with Dr. Walsh about alien psychology, every piece of equipment Ryan had designed, every lesson about human survival and adaptation, it all came down to this moment. Thrakvoss stood waiting. In the center of the circle, even more terrifying up close than he had appeared through the cameras, the alien's 4 eyes glowed with unnatural light. And Jake could hear the hum of electronic systems running throughout his body. This was no longer the creature Jake had fought 3 years ago. This was something new. Something that had been built specifically to kill humans. You came, Thrakvoss said, his voice now having a mechanical quality that had not been there. Before, I was not certain you would have the courage to face me after so long. Jake walked slowly toward the center of the circle, studying his enemies. Each of the enhanced aliens was watching him with the focus of a predator studying its prey. They had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, and they were confident that nothing could go wrong. I keep my promises, Jake replied. It's just like, you do? Thrakvoss smiled, showing teeth that had been replaced with metal fangs. 3 years ago, you defeated me through tricks and luck. You exploited my overconfidence and my unfamiliarity with human tactics. I have spent every day since. Then studying your species, learning your weaknesses, preparing for this moment. Jake stopped about 20 feet away from the alien, close enough to talk, but far enough to react if Thrakvoss attacked suddenly. And what did you learn? I learned that humans are indeed Deathworlders, Thrakvoss said. Your species is more dangerous than we initially believed, but I also learned that you can be beaten. Every advantage you possess can be countered. Every strength can be turned into a weakness. The alien gestured to his companions. Each of these warriors has been enhanced to counter specific human abilities. Your speed, your adaptability, your intelligence, your teamwork. We have studied them all and developed countermeasures. Jake looked around the circle of enhanced aliens. He could see that Thrakvoss was telling the truth. Each creature had been modified to be the perfect anti-human weapon. They had prepared for every tactic Jake might use, every advantage he might try to exploit, but as Jake studied his enemies, he noticed something important. They were standing in perfect formation, moving with mechanical precision, thinking with enhanced but predictable patterns. They had become more efficient, but they had also become more predictable. "You're right," Jake said finally. "You have studied humans very carefully. You know all about our strengths and weaknesses. You've prepared countermeasures for everything." "We might do." Thrakvoss nodded, confident that victory was already assured. "But there's one thing you didn't learn," Jake continued. "You learned what humans do, but you never learned what humans are." The fight was about to begin. The fight began without warning. Thrakvoss launched himself at Jake with incredible speed, his enhanced muscles propelling him across the plaza in a single bound. His electrified claws extended fully, crackling with deadly energy as they sliced through the air where Jake's head had been moments before, but Jake was no longer there. Instead of trying to match Thrakvoss's speed, Jake had anticipated the attack and was already moving. He rolled to the side, came up running, and activated one of his sonic disruptors. The device sent a high-frequency pulse directly at Thrakvoss's enhanced hearing systems. The alien stumbled, his cybernetic implants struggling to process the conflicting signals. It was only for a moment, but Jake used that moment to put distance between himself and his enemy. He had learned from Amanda that the first rule of fighting a superior opponent was to never let them dictate the terms of the battle. "Clever," Thrakvoss said as his systems recalibrated. "But I am prepared for your sonic weapons now." The other enhanced aliens began moving to surround Jake, but he was already running toward the edge of the plaza. He knew that staying in the open space would be suicide. He needed to use the environment to his advantage. Just as he had 3 years ago, Jake reached the colony's industrial sector and ducked between 2 large storage tanks. Thrakvoss followed, his heavy footsteps shaking the ground. The aliens' enhanced vision could track Jake even in the shadows, but Jake was not trying to hide. He was trying to choose the battlefield. "You cannot run forever, human," Thrakvoss called out. "I am faster than you, stronger than you, and my allies are surrounding this entire area. There is nowhere to go." Jake activated his suit's communication system. "Ryan, I need you to start venting the emergency coolant from storage tank 7. In 30 seconds. "Jake, that coolant is toxic to humans." Ryan's voice crackled through the cum. "I know," Jake replied. "Trust me." Jake continued moving through the industrial sector, leading Thrakvoss deeper into the maze of pipes, tanks, and machinery. The alien was growing frustrated, his mechanical thinking struggling to understand Jake's seemingly random movements. The silicon-based warrior, Zurich 4, appeared ahead of Jake, blocking his path with arms that had been replaced with spinning blade weapons. Behind him, Thrakvoss was closing in fast. Jake appeared to be trapped. "Now you die," Zurich 4 said, his blade arms spinning up to lethal speed. Jake smiled and activated a micro-explosive he had placed on the storage tank above them during his apparently random movements. The explosion ruptured the tank, sending a flood of toxic coolant cascading down on all 3 of them. Jake's environmental suit protected him completely from the chemical, but the aliens had not prepared for this specific hazard. Zurich 4's metal body began to corrode immediately, his blade arms seizing up as the chemicals ate through his joints. Thrakvoss's organic components were protected by his armor, but his cybernetic systems began malfunctioning as the coolant seeped into the gaps between his armor plates. "Impossible," Thrakvoss snarled, shaking his head to clear his vision. "But you're poisoning yourself to hurt us." "I'm not poisoning myself," Jake replied, tapping his helmet. "I'm using my environment." Humans learned long ago that the most dangerous environments can be turned into weapons. Jake kept moving, leading his enemies through different sections of the colony. Each area had been subtly prepared during his 3 years of training. Explosive charges hidden in strategic locations, emergency systems that could be triggered remotely, environmental hazards that could be activated at will. The energy being Vex Prime tried to corner Jake in the colony's power station. The creature could become incorporeal at will, passing through solid matter to attack from unexpected angles. But Jake had studied the power station's layout extensively. "You cannot fight what you cannot touch," Vex Prime said, his form flickering. Between solid and energy, Jake activated the power station's electromagnetic containment field. Designed to contain dangerous energy discharges, Vex Prime found himself suddenly trapped in solid form, able to phase through matter while caught in the field's influence. Actually, Jake said, I can contain what I can't touch. He used another sonic disruptor to disorient Vex Prime then. Activated an emergency power discharge that sent the energy being flying across the room, his form destabilized and flickering weakly. One by one, Jake eliminated or disabled the other enhanced aliens. He used Korth, the breaker's massive size, against him, luring the creature into a structural support area and then collapsing the building on top of him. He trapped two other aliens in an airlock and flooded it with an atmosphere they could not breathe. Each victory came from the same principle. Instead of trying to match his enemies' enhanced abilities, Jake used their overspecialization against them. They had been designed to counter human tactics, but they had been designed to counter the wrong human tactics. Finally, it was just Jake and Thrakvoss, facing each other in the colony's central courtyard. The alien's armor was damaged, his cybernetic systems sparking occasionally, but he was still incredibly dangerous. You think you have one? Thrakvoss said, his voice distorted by damaged vocal systems. But I am still stronger than you. I am still faster than you. I am still the perfect weapon. That's your problem, Jake replied. You became a weapon. I remained human. Thrakvoss charged again, but this time Jake did not run. Instead, he did something that the alien's enhanced systems could not process. He improvised. Jake grabbed a piece of debris from one of the damaged buildings and threw it, not at Thrakvoss, but at a support beam above him. The beam came crashing down, forcing Thrakvoss to dodge to the side. As he did, Jake was already moving, using the alien's own momentum against him. He activated his remaining micro-explosives, not to harm Thrakvoss directly, but to create a dust cloud that interfered with the alien's enhanced vision. In the confusion, Jake did something that 3 years of enhancements had not prepared Thrakvoss for. He showed mercy. Instead of delivering a killing blow, Jake used his sonic disruptors to overload the alien's cybernetic systems, shutting them down without causing permanent damage. Thrakvoss collapsed, his enhanced body unable to function without its artificial systems. He was still alive, but he was helpless. Jake stood over him, breathing heavily, but victorious. Why? Thrakvoss asked weakly. I came here to kill you. I brought an army to destroy your people. Why do you not finish me? Jake looked down at the defeated alien, and for the first time, he saw not a monster, but a creature who had lost himself in the pursuit of revenge. Because that's what makes us human, Jake said. We don't have to kill our enemies to win. We can choose to be better than our worst impulses. Jake helped Thrakvoss to his feet, supporting the alien's weight as his systems slowly began to reboot. You spent 3 years turning yourself into the perfect weapon, but weapons are just tools. They can only do what they were designed to do. And what are humans designed to do? Thrakvoss asked. Nothing, Jake replied. That's what makes us dangerous. We're not designed for any one thing. We adapt, we learn, we change, we grow. We can become whatever we need to become to survive, but we never stop being human. Thrakvoss was quiet for a long moment. My people will not understand this mercy. They will see it as weakness. Then help them understand, Jake said. You've seen what revenge leads to. You turned yourself into a monster, and it still wasn't enough. So maybe it's time to try a different path. Jake activated his communicator. Ryan, send a message to the Krillian homeworld. Tell them that Thrakvoss has been defeated, but that he is alive and will be returned to them unharmed. Tell them that humans are willing to discuss a real peace treaty. Are you sure about this? Ryan's voice came through the comm. Jake looked at Thrakvoss. He was staring at him with something that might have been wonder, I'm sure. We've proven that we can fight. Now let's prove that we can do something even more difficult. What is that? Thrakvoss asked. Forgive, Jake said over the following months. Jake's decision to spare Thrakvoss led to the first real peace negotiations between humans and several alien species. The defeated warrior returned to his people as an advocate for cooperation. Rather than conflict, he told them about the strange humans who could have killed him but chose instead to save him. Not all aliens accepted this message, but enough did to make a difference. The Revenge Coalition disbanded, its members either returning to their home worlds or seeking redemption through peaceful means. Jake Morrison became known throughout the galaxy not as the human who could defeat any alien in combat, but as the human who proved that sometimes the greatest victory comes from choosing not to fight at all. And in the end, that proved to be the most human thing of all, the ability to adapt even to peace, to grow beyond the need for revenge, and to choose mercy when the galaxy expected violence. The beast had returned for revenge. But what he found instead was something far more powerful than any weapon or enhancement. He found humanity's greatest strength, which was the ability to remain human even in the face of the inhuman. The war was over, but the real victory was just beginning.